the outpost on Kepri. For wasn't much to look at. A few domes of reinforced alloy, 2 research labs, a comms tower that spent half its time malfunctioning in the solar storms, and a population of 37 scientists, engineers, and techs who had long since grown used to boredom. The planet itself was little more than a frozen desert circling a dim red dwarf. No lush biosphere, no mineral veins worth strip mining, no strategic location. The only reason humanity bothered with Kepri was because of strange radar shadows buried under its southern ice sheets, shadows that looked suspiciously geometric. Most assumed the anomalies were just unusual geological formations. That's what Dr. Amira Hassan expected when she stepped off the shuttle 3 months earlier. She was an archaeolinguist by training, not a field scientist, more accustomed to parsing scraps of symbols than hiking through ice caverns. But she had learned long ago that out on the frontier, job descriptions blurred. When the automated drills cracked open the tunnels beneath the ice, Amira was one of the first to descend. The tunnels weren't natural. That much was clear immediately. The walls were too smooth, too deliberate, angles repeated with uncanny precision. Someone had carved them long ago, though the ice had swallowed everything in creeping layers. The team pushed deeper, headlamps casting long beams through the haze of frost. What they found ended every assumption. Bodies. At first glance, they seemed like sculptures trapped in translucent ice. But as heaters thawed the chamber, the awful reality emerged. These were corpses, preserved perfectly, frozen in twisted shapes of terror. Not fossils, not skeletons. Flesh still clung to them, mottled and pale. The aliens were unfamiliar, their bodies elongated, limbs jointed differently than any creature of Earth. But the details didn't matter as much as the wounds. Every body bore marks of violence, not war wounds. Those Amira had seen in human remains, burned bone and shattered armor. No, these were different. Bite marks gouged into torsos, limbs half severed by crushing force, claw rakes tearing through chitin and sinew. Some bodies had chunks missing entirely, as if ripped free and consumed. The chamber fell silent as the realization spread through the team. Dr. Patel, the medical officer, whispered the words no one wanted to say. These were hunted. The dig accelerated after that. More chambers revealed the same grisly scenes. Families huddled in corners, frozen in last embraces, their bodies shredded by something that had forced its way inside. In one hall, Amira found claw marks scoring the very walls, desperate scrapes as victims tried to slow whatever was dragging them into the dark. But it wasn't just carnage. On the inner walls, etched hastily with crude tools, symbols and words repeated again and again. The language was alien, yes, but structure was universal. Please, warnings. Amira worked feverishly to translate. Within days, her algorithms aligned enough to catch recurring phrases. Her first translation, halting but clear, froze the blood of everyone in the camp. They found us. Other lines followed, cracked from fragmented texts. We were prey. They came from the dark. We tried to hide. The researchers sent reports back to Central Command on Earth. As always, bureaucracy was slow to react. The first analysts dismissed it as paranoia. Perhaps civil war, they argued. Perhaps predators native to the planet. Nothing more. But Amira kept digging. Each new tunnel told the same story. Not an isolated massacre. A pattern. Other expeditions across the frontier began reporting eerily similar finds. A mining station on Tessaphon, 3 uncovered alien skeletons with the same bite marks. A survey team in another system found burned-out cities, their ruins littered with scorched bones. Always the same warnings carved in the same desperate tone. Different species. Same fate. By the time the evidence reached undeniable weight, a chill had spread across human space. For decades, humanity had looked at the stars and wondered why they were alone. Optimists spoke of benevolent civilizations just out of reach. Pessimists feared xenophobic empires. The truth was worse. The galaxy wasn't empty. It was cleared. Amira's team made the final discovery that silenced all doubters. At the deepest point in the ice tunnels, in what appeared to be a last refuge chamber, lay a terminal still clinging to power. Against all odds, its memory crystals had endured. Translating the interface took weeks, but when the logs opened, the story unfolded in horrifying clarity. The extinct species had been spacefarers, spread across several worlds. They had known prosperity. Then came the hunters. Silent ships slipping from void dark. Colonies cut off, cities darkened. Survivors tried to flee, but they were tracked, cornered, consumed. Not enslaved, not negotiated with. Consumed. One log, shaky and desperate, contained the words that would spread across human systems like a poison. They eat us. They do not stop. They are many. We run and they follow. We hide and they find. We fight and they tear us apart. We are prey. We are meat. Amira delivered her findings in person to the Interstellar Council. Standing in a vast chamber on Earth, she projected the images of the frozen corpses, the claw marks, the final logs. Her voice carried across billions of viewers tuned into the emergency broadcast. This is no myth, no misunderstanding. We have found proof of predation, intelligent predators. This galaxy was not empty. It was emptied. Silence followed her words. Politicians shifted uneasily. Military officers stared at the screens. Citizens watching from their homes felt a shiver they couldn't shake. For the first time in recorded history, humanity truly understood the scope of danger beyond its cradle. The session ended without applause, without speeches of reassurance. Everyone knew what it meant. If predators like these existed, and had already destroyed countless civilizations, then humanity had only two choices: become the next entry in the hunter's feast, or fight. Back on Kepri, for Amira lingered alone in the tunnels. Her work was done, yet she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, even with the predators long gone. She pressed her hand against the wall where the alien carvings read, "We were prey." For the first time, she whispered a promise not as a scientist, but as a human. No, not us. Outside, the red dwarf star flickered dimly. A frozen world kept its secrets no longer. And somewhere in the silent dark between stars, the true predators might already have noticed the arrival of a new species. A species that had just discovered the rules of the galaxy were far crueler than it imagined. Fear spread faster than any fleet. The discovery at Kepri, for it shattered the dream of a peaceful, empty galaxy. By the time Dr. Hassan's words reached the colonies, whispers of predators became common talk in every settlement from Earth's lunar cities to the remote mining domes orbiting far suns. Most people try to dismiss it as academic paranoia, another sensational report from scientists hungry for funding. But then the other findings emerged, scattered, undeniable, and chilling. The ruins were everywhere. On Calicor, a survey drone uncovered collapsed spires filled with skeletal remains. The bones were fragile, bird-like, but every ribcage bore puncture holes, as though something had driven fangs into their hearts. On Aeon Station, explorers deciphered murals scratched into walls with bloody claws, desperate artwork of shadows devouring children. And on Ilioprime, a planet once lush with forests, human scouts found piles of armor torn to ribbons, the ground blackened with ash where thousands had died in fire and teeth. The pattern was unmistakable. It wasn't disease. It wasn't natural predators. It wasn't war as humanity understood it. Entire civilizations had been stalked, cornered, and eaten. Amira Hassan sat with her research coalition, eyes burning from lack of sleep. The group was now the center of the storm. Linguists, xenoanthropologists, and exobiologists pouring through recovered fragments. Again and again, the same concept surfaced, scratched into walls, carved into bones, encoded in fading digital logs. A single name. The translations varied. The eaters, the dark ones, the devourers, the shadow teeth. But the meaning was always the same. They were hunters who fed on the intelligent, apex predators of the void. Not a single culture describes negotiation, Amira muttered, voice hoarse as she leaned over another fragment of alien script. Not once. No treaties. No surrenders. Only running. Only dying. Her colleague, Dr. Patel, rubbed his temples. It doesn't make sense. Predators on Earth eat because they must. They don't eradicate entire species. That's wasteful, inefficient, Amira shook her head. Not of their prey is spacefaring. Leave one survivor, and you risk warning others. And if they enjoy it, she didn't finish. The thought was too monstrous. The fragments painted horrifying images. Ships that struck from the dark between systems. Too fast intercept. Colonies cut off first. Communications jammed. FDL relays severed. Then the harvest. Silent strikes in the night. Families dragged screaming from shelters. Survivors frozen mid-flight. And then nothing but silence. For weeks, humanity debated what the predators truly were. Were they a species of beasts with crude cunning? Or something worse, an intelligence that had built entire cultures around the hunt? That question was answered not by scholars, but by tragedy. It began at the mining colony of Bracken's Reach, a lonely station orbiting a gas giant far on the rim. The colony was small, 600 people, most of them laborers, and had no military protection. They sent no distress call. They simply went silent. 2 weeks later, when a trade vessel docked, they found the station breached. Not destroyed, not bombed from orbit, breached. Entire sections were torn open by surgical cuts, as if something had peeled the walls away. Blood smeared the halls, but no bodies remained. Not one. Meals sat unfinished in the mess hall. A child's toy drifted through a corridor, its owner gone. The trade crew fled, broadcasting images to every human channel before abandoning the system entirely. Panic erupted across the colonies. Ordinary citizens demanded answers. Soldiers demanded action. Politicians offered none. The Interstellar Council called for calm, claiming Bracken's Reach was an isolated incident. But no one believed them. Humanity now had its first proof that the predators were not relics of the past. They were still here. They had noticed, and they had begun to hunt again. Admiral Reyes, commander of the 5th Expeditionary Fleet, was among the first to see the Bracken footage. He watched it in silence, his jaw tightening as each image flickered past. The torn walls, the blood, the drifting toy. When the recording ended, he spoke only once. They've marked us. Others weren't so measured. Across the frontier, families packed their ships, fleeing deeper into human space. Colonies that once thrived on independence now begged for military protection. Militia groups armed themselves with whatever weapons they could scavenge. And everywhere, people whispered the same line Amira had translated weeks before. We were prey. Amira herself found little comfort in the attention her research had drawn. She was now hounded by military officers demanding insight into predator tactics, by journalists hungry for sound bites, by frightened citizens who wrote desperate letters asking how long humanity had left. She had no answers, only fragments. One evening, exhausted, she sat before a projection of an alien log recovered from Calicor. The recording showed only static and sound, but the sound was unforgettable, a chorus of voices screaming, then breaking into a sobbing chant. She listened again, translating word by word, until the last phrase came clear. They will come for you too. She shut the recording off and sat in darkness. For the first time, she wondered if humanity had already sealed its fate by reaching into the stars. The predators remained unseen, but their shadows stretched longer each day. Ships began vanishing on the trade routes. Stations failed to report in. Always the same pattern. No survivors, no distress calls, only silence. Humanity had seen war before, but this was different. War left ruins. War left corpses. The predators left nothing but absence. The military compiled every scrap of data from alien ruins and human encounters. A picture began to form. The predators were not omnipotent gods, but hunters with distinct patterns. They isolated colonies first, cutting communications. They struck in silence, avoiding prolonged battles. They harvested bodies, leaving little evidence, and they never announced themselves. Fear was their weapon, dread their tool. Amira briefed the council again, her voice sharper now. Her exhaustion burned into anger. These aren't conquerors. They don't want territory or slaves. They are not an empire. They are a hunger. They do not take planets. They take people. They feed, and they leave nothing behind. A council member, trembling, asked a question that haunted billions. Can they be reasoned with? Amira looked him in the eyes. You don't reason with a wolf when it's tearing your throat. You stop it or you die. Her words spread across human space, replayed on every channel. For some, it inspired fear. For others, rage. For all, it was a turning point. And then, as if to punctuate her warning, came the broadcast. No one knew how it slipped through human systems, whether hijacked a satellite or rode the ghost of an old signal. It appeared everywhere at once, on military consoles, civilian screens, even the personal comms of children. A voice, distorted and wrong, layered with echoes that seemed to vibrate in the bones. It spoke not in one language, but in many, snatches of alien tongues, overlapping into a grotesque chorus. Some were known from the ruins, others entirely new, but one word repeated in every tongue, and every human understood it, no matter what translation software they used. Run. The message lasted only 10 seconds. Then silence. Humans had always lived with predators. On Earth's plains, they were surrounded by beasts with teeth and claws sharper than any stone tool. On the seas, leviathans could drag entire boats beneath the waves. For millennia, humanity survived by learning, by adapting, by turning the tables on hunters larger and faster than themselves. Now, with the shadow of interstellar predators looming, that same instinct stirred again. The Brackens reached massacre, followed by the predators' chilling broadcast, had erased all illusions. This was no isolated incident, no myth from alien ruins. Humanity had been marked as prey. But prey did not always submit. Sometimes prey fought back, uniting the fractured. The Interstellar Council had always been a place of argument, Earth's representatives bickering with the frontier, corporate lobbyists clashing with colonial governors, military officers clashing with scientists. For decades, unity had been impossible. Now, fear forged overnight. When Admiral Reyes strode into the council chamber, flanked by Dr. Hassan and her coalition, even the most arrogant politicians stayed silent. The footage from Bracken's reach looped on the chamber walls, blood on the floors, the drifting toy. It was no longer possible to downplay the threat. Reyes spoke plainly. We are being hunted. We can scatter and die like the ones before us, or we can fight. But we must choose now. If we delay, there will be no humanity left to argue. His words carried the weight of a soldier who had seen war before, who had buried comrades. He didn't plead for unity. He demanded it, and against all odds, he got it. The council voted unanimously to authorize emergency mobilization across all colonies. Military budgets tripled. Civilian industries were nationalized to produce weapons and ships. Engineers worked day and night to retrofit mining craft into gunships. Civilian comms networks were rerouted to create early warning systems. Humanity, for the first time in history, acted as one species. The Predator dossier. Dr. Hassan became the reluctant face of the crisis. Her translations of alien ruins were now required reading in every military academy. She briefed commanders daily, outlining predator tactics and psychology. They rely on silence, she explained during one high-level meeting. They isolate, they terrorize, they strike quickly. Every extinct species we studied made the same mistake. They tried to run. Running only made the predators bolder. A colonel frowned. So what's the alternative? Stand and die. Amira shook her head. Stand and fight. Bite back. Predators know prey runs. What happens when prey bites harder than they expect? Her words spread beyond the council. Soldiers and civilians alike began repeating it as a mantra. Bite back. The frontier hardens. On the frontier, where life was already harsh, adaptation came quickest. Colonists who once carried rifles to ward off raiders now trained with military instructors in orbital barracks. Farmers welded armor plating onto their tractors and converted them into combat vehicles. Entire asteroid belts were seeded with hidden mines and decoy beacons, designed to lure predators into kill zones. Some colonies became bait by choice. Volunteering to act as traps, they transmitted fake distress calls, broadcasting signals identical to those the predators seemed to target. When hunters arrived expecting easy kills, they found coordinated ambushes orbital guns, minefields, and entire fleets waiting. Losses were high, but for the first time, humanity began scoring victories. Predator ships were fast and stealthy, but fragile once forced into direct combat. Their armor, optimized for speed, shattered under concentrated fire. Human boarding parties proved devastating in close quarters, Marines storming Predator hulls with shotguns, flamethrowers, and knives. It was ugly, brutal fighting, but it worked. Reports spread quickly across human space. At first whispered, then shouted. The Predators can bleed. The mind of a hunter. Admiral Reyes spent every waking moment studying the Predators' tactics. He pored over battle data, searching for patterns. They always struck from shadow, never engaging in prolonged battles. They avoided planets with heavy defenses, preferring isolated targets. They used fear as their first weapon, silence as their second. Reyes' conclusion was simple but chilling. They've never faced organized resistance. They don't understand it. They've hunted uncoordinated prey for so long. They've forgotten what it means to fight a real war. That insight changed everything. Humanity stopped reacting and started planning. Fleets patrolled in wolf packs, never alone. Colonies coordinated their defenses into overlapping nets. Recon drones spread through uncharted space, mapping predator movements. Humanity wasn't just surviving. It was learning faster than the hunters could adapt. Blood in the water. The turning point came at the Battle of Hecate's Belt. A predator flotilla descended on a mining colony, expecting silence and panic. Instead, they were met by Admiral Reyes' fleet lying in wait among the asteroids. The fight was vicious. Predator ships darted like sharks, tearing apart smaller human craft. But for every ship lost, humanity struck back harder. Hidden railguns embedded in asteroids fired coordinated volleys, ripping holes through Predator hulls. Mines disguised as drifting rock tore their formations apart. When one Predator ship attempted to flee, Reyes gave the order that would become legendary. Board it. Human Marines stormed the alien vessel in zero gravity, shotguns and blades clashing against claws and teeth. The Predators fought savagely, but they weren't used to prey that charged forward instead of cowering. The Marines cleared the ship room by room, leaving nothing alive. For the first time in history, humanity captured a Predator ship intact. The victory sent shockwaves across human space. Celebrations erupted in colonies that had known only fear. Children painted murals of wolves chasing lions. Soldiers carried patches embroidered with the words proof of predation. Humanity was no longer merely surviving. It was proving that the hunters could be hunted. The cost of defiance. Victory, however, came at a price. Thousands of lives were lost in the belt. Entire colonies were reduced to rubble in counterattacks. Civilians across human space lived with constant dread, never knowing if the next silence on the comms meant another Bracken's reach. In one speech broadcast across the colonies, Amira spoke directly to those who had lost everything. I know what you've seen. I've walked among the ruins of those who came before. They carved their last words into stone. We were prey, but we are not them. Humanity is older than fear. We are hunters ourselves, born on a world where everything wanted to eat us. And we survived. We adapted. We endured. That is our proof. That is why we will not vanish as they did. Her words were raw, unpolished, but they resonated across thousands of systems. People clung to them like a shield. The new doctrine. The Council formalized a new military doctrine, Predator counteroffensive strategy. It was bold, even reckless. Instead of scattering fleets to defend every colony, humanity concentrated forces into roving strike groups, hunting Predator incursions before they reached the core worlds. Colonies were trained not to beg for rescue, but to... The galaxy had grown quiet, not the peace of safety, but the silence of breath held in fear. For months, Predator attacks had slowed, not because they had grown merciful, because they were wary. Humanity had bitten back, and in doing so, had broken the unbroken pattern of the galaxy. For the first time in millennia, the hunters hesitated. But hesitation wasn't enough. Humanity knew the Predators would regroup. They would adapt, and if given time, they would return with greater numbers. Admiral Reyes gathered the fleet commanders in the war chamber aboard his flagship, Vanguard. The hollow map of human space burned in red and blue. Blue for colonies still alive, red for the dozens already gone silent. He studied it in grim silence before speaking. We cannot wait for them to come again. We must finish this. Not just defend, not just resist. End them. No one argued. Too much blood had been spilled. Too many names read in mourning ceremonies. Humanity was united not by politics or creed, but by loss. The evidence of atrocity. Dr. Hassan stood before the council one last time, holding the final piece of proof humanity needed. The captured Predator vessel had revealed more than technology. Deep within its memory banks lay coordinates. Feeding ground scattered across uncharted systems. Recon drones sent to those sites returned footage so horrifying that even hardened soldiers struggled to watch. Vaults filled with bodies, preserved as if on display. Thousands of alien species, some known only through ruins, others never seen before, stacked like trophies in frozen halls. Not a war, not conquest. Farming. One recording showed the predators themselves, moving among the vaults. They did not look like mindless beasts. They wore armor shaped to their jagged forms, carried tools with deliberate precision. They were intelligent. They chose this. When the footage spread, hesitation evaporated. Farmers, miners, engineers, all called for vengeance. Humanity could not allow such a horror to exist. Dr. Hassan's voice shook as she addressed billions through the broadcast network. I have read the last words of the lost. I have seen their final pleas. They believed no one would ever rise against the hunters. But we are here. We are alive. And we are not running. We will be their proof that prey can become predators. Her words lit a fire across human space. Operation Talon. The offensive was codenamed Operation Talon. It would be humanity's largest fleet action in history. Dozens of carriers, hundreds of escorts, thousands of smaller craft, all converging not to defend, but to strike. Admiral Reyes outlined a plan with cold precision. They would lure predator fleets into a system where humanity held the advantage, a dead world orbiting a volatile star. Using experimental weapons, they would destabilize the star itself, collapsing its energy into a storm of radiation and fire. The predators would be trapped, annihilated alongside human forces willing to pay the price. It was a plan born of desperation and resolve. When Reyes presented it to the council, one governor asked softly, "Admiral, are you certain this will end them?" Reyes met his gaze without flinching. "Nothing is certain. But if we do nothing, our end is." The vote was unanimous. The final battle. The fleet entered the chosen system under the shadow of silence. No speeches, no grand fanfare, only quiet determination. Men and women checked their weapons, wrote letters to families they might never see again, and sat in silence staring at the stars. On the Vanguard, Reyes paced the bridge. Dr. Hassan stood beside him, a civilian among soldiers, but unwilling to stay behind. She had been there when humanity first discovered the truth. She would be there when they finished it. The predators arrived exactly as expected. Their ship slipped from the void, dozens at first, then hundreds. Sleek, jagged forms glinting like teeth in the dark. They encircled the human fleet with predatory grace, confident in their numbers. But humanity did not scatter. Humanity held the line. The battle erupted in blinding fury. Railguns thundered. Plasma cannons spat fire across the void. Predator ships darted and struck, tearing into escorts, raking claws of energy through human hulls. But for every ship lost, humans dragged two predators into the abyss. Boarding torpedoes smashed into enemy vessels, disgorging Marines who fought with knives and rifles in zero gravity, their battle cries echoing in the comms. Dr. Hassan watched from the command deck, heart pounding, screens lit with casualty reports, names scrolling faster than she could read. And yet, amidst the horror, she saw something new. Predator formations breaking, their ships faltering under relentless human assault. For the first time in memory, the hunters were afraid. The sacrifice. As planned, the fleet lured the predators deeper into orbit of the unstable star. The weapon, an experimental array built from salvaged alien tech, was ready. It would collapse the star into a raging storm of plasma, destroying everything in its path. But activation required a manual trigger. Someone had to stay behind. Reyes volunteered. There was no hesitation in his voice as he gave the order. Signal the fleet to withdraw. I'll finish this. Dr. Hassan grabbed his arm. You can't, Admiral. Humanity needs you alive. He looked at her, his face lined with exhaustion and resolve. Humanity needs to survive. That's bigger than me. For a moment, silence hung between them, the weight of everything unsaid pressing harder than the battle outside. Then Hassan nodded, tears stinging her eyes. Then let the galaxy remember. Reyes smiled faintly, the first she had seen in weeks. Oh, they will. He turned back to the console and began the sequence. The reckoning. The human fleet pulled back just as the star erupted. Light consumed the system, a wave of fire and radiation boiling across space. Predator ships writhed and disintegrated, their stealth and speed meaningless against the fury of the star itself turned into a weapon. Rhea's flagship remained behind, a single spark swallowed by the inferno. From distant vantage points, human crews watched the Predators burn. Silence filled their ships as the light faded. For the first time since the discovery at Kepri, the galaxy felt clean again. When the news spread across human space, mourning and celebration intertwined. Billions wept for the fallen, yet billions more cheered the end of the hunters. Humanity had paid dearly, but humanity had endured. Proof of predation. Months later, Dr. Hassan stood before the council once more. This time, the chamber was filled not with fear, but with pride. Behind her, the hollow screen showed the ruins of Predator vaults, now empty. Her voice carried steady and clear. They told us to run. They told us we were prey. But we are not. Humanity has always carried proof of predation in our blood. From the first fire on Earth's plains to the last fire above a star, we have endured. And now, so has the galaxy. We're the end of the hunters. The chamber erupted in applause, not for politics, but for survival, for victory. Later, standing alone, Hassan looked out at the stars. They no longer seemed so hostile. They were still vast, still dangerous, but no longer haunted by shadows that could not be fought. In her mind, she heard Admiral Rhea's final words. They hunted us, but we are the children of hunters. She whispered them softly, a promise to the void. Never again. And with that, humanity's story etched itself into the stars, not